Have you ever been in a place where the air feels heavy, like everyone is holding their breath, waiting for something that's about to break them open inside? That was the atmosphere the night Johnny Depp stepped on stage to honor his friend Jeff Beck. It wasn't just a concert, it wasn't just another performance. It was something that carried the weight of love, loss, and friendship. You could feel it in the silence before the first note. You could see it in the way Depp held his guitar, not as a prop, not as an instrument, but as if it was the only thing keeping him standing. His face said it all. This wasn't going to be entertainment, this was going to be grief, poured out in sound. From the moment he appeared, people in the audience knew this wasn't the Johnny Depp they were used to. He wasn't the charming actor cracking witty lines. He wasn't the unpredictable rock star who sometimes seemed untouchable. He was a man who had lost someone irreplaceable. And the truth is, everyone there could sense it. Even before he played a single note, there was this electricity in the room, a stillness that only comes when people realize they're about to witness something real. Jeff Beck wasn't just a friend to Depp. He was a lifeline. They shared years of music, long nights of playing until the sun came up, laughter over little things, and the kind of brotherhood that only comes when two people connect beyond the surface. Beck was one of the few people who saw Depp without the layers of Hollywood, without the noise of fame, and accepted him for the artist he was at his core. So when Depp lost him, it wasn't just the loss of a collaborator, it was like losing a piece of himself. And that's why, when the first chords rang out, they weren't polished. They weren't perfect. They were heavy, trembling, filled with cracks of emotion that no rehearsal could cover up. Depp's hand shook slightly as he strummed, and his voice, when it finally came, was raw. Not the voice of an actor. Not the voice of a performer. The voice of a man holding back tears, forcing out words that were almost too painful to say. He sang, but really, it sounded like he was speaking directly to his friend, as if Beck was still there, listening in the shadows of the stage. And then the tears came. At first, he tried to hold them back, blinking rapidly, pausing between lines. But eventually, they spilled down his face, leaving him with no choice but to wipe them away mid-performance. And that moment, when the guitar dipped for a second and he brought his hand up to his face, said more than any lyric could. Because grief is like that. It doesn't wait for the right time. It doesn't care about the cameras or the audience. It just comes. The audience was silent. Nobody moved, nobody made a sound, as if the whole place knew they were seeing something sacred. And then, something remarkable happened. Instead of letting him break down alone, the crowd began to sing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It was soft, steady, and strong. Voices blending together, strangers singing with him, for him, and maybe even for Beck. It was as if the audience became his safety net, holding him up so he wouldn't collapse under the weight of it all. Thousands of people, all different, all carrying their own memories of loss, joined in that moment of unity. Depp's hands steadied. His voice, though still shaky, grew stronger. Because that's what happens when people share their strength. Suddenly, he wasn't just one man grieving on a stage, he was part of something larger, something human and unbreakable. For a brief moment, you could almost believe Jeff Beck was there too, smiling at the way his music, his spirit, his presence was bringing people together even after he was gone. And then came the shift. The thing that no one expected. As the last notes of the tribute faded, Depp leaned into the microphone. His voice was soft, fragile, but steady enough to carry. And he told the audience something Beck had once told him. Not a heavy story. Not a heartbreaking confession. Just a simple, witty piece of advice, the kind of thing a friend says in passing that stays with you forever. And that one line changed everything. The crowd, who moments earlier had been fighting back tears, suddenly broke into smiles and even laughter. The heaviness lifted, replaced by warmth. It was as if Depp had handed them a gift, one last memory of Beck's humor and lightheartedness, one last reminder that his friend wasn't only about music, but about joy. And in that instant, the tribute transformed. It wasn't just about saying goodbye anymore. It was about celebrating. Celebrating Beck's life, his humor, his music, and the way he touched people around him. Depp had started in tears, but he ended with a smile. And the audience, who had been pulled into the storm with him, walked out feeling lighter, remembering that grief and joy can live side by side. This moment mattered. It mattered because it stripped away everything we think we know about Johnny Depp. For so long, people have seen him as larger than life. As the eccentric actor, the unpredictable musician, the star who seems to live in a different world. But here, he was just a man. Vulnerable, grieving, and honest. And maybe that's what makes this tribute so unforgettable. Because when someone that famous allows themselves to be that human, it reminds all of us that it's okay to be broken too. Think about it. How often do we hide our tears, cover up our pain, put on a brave face because we don't want others to see us crack? And yet, here was Johnny Depp, standing in front of thousands of people, letting the tears flow, letting the cracks show, and somehow becoming stronger for it. That's what grief does, it forces you to feel, to let go, to connect. And sometimes, in those moments, the very thing you think will break you ends up binding you closer to the people around you. And here's something else people don't always notice. Music, especially in moments of grief, is more than just sound. Scientists say it can actually help the brain process emotions, help the heart release tension, and help the soul find peace. When Depp strummed that guitar, it wasn't just performance, it was therapy. Every note was a release, every lyric a conversation with his friend, every tear a way of saying the things he couldn't put into words. And the fact that he chose to do that in public, in front of an audience, only shows how much he needed it, and how much he trusted the people who were there. There was also a subtle detail that spoke volumes. The guitar he played that night wasn't random. It was the same one he had used during early sessions with Beck. To most in the crowd, it might have just looked like a guitar. But to those who knew, it was a silent nod, a way of bringing Beck into the moment, a way of saying, "We started with this, and I'll end with this. For you." That kind of gesture may go unnoticed by many, but for Depp, it was everything. It was his private tribute, woven into the public one. Some people expected Depp to pull back from music after Beck's passing, to retreat into silence, to let the pain close him off. But this night showed the opposite. It showed that music wasn't just something he did for fun or fame, it was his lifeline. His way of keeping his friend alive, of healing himself, of proving that even in loss, you can still create something beautiful. And isn't that the message for all of us? That when we lose someone we love, the answer isn't to stop living. It's to keep going, to find little ways of carrying them with us. Whether it's through a song, a story, a laugh, or even just whispering their name when no one else is around. That's how love survives. That's how memory lives on. Not in silence, but in the small, everyday acts of remembrance. Johnny Depp's tribute to Beck wasn't perfect. His voice cracked, his hands shook, his tears interrupted the music. But that's exactly why it mattered. Because it was real. And in a world full of polished performances and staged emotions, real is rare. That's why people can't stop talking about it. That's why it touched so many hearts. It wasn't about being flawless, it was about being honest. So here's the question I want to leave with you. If you had the chance to honor someone you've lost, how would you do it? Would you write them a letter you'll never send? Would you play their favorite song and let it echo in your room? Would you share their best joke with someone new, just to keep their laughter alive? Think about it, because in the end, those little things are what matter most. Johnny Depp's tear-soaked tribute to Beck showed us all that grief isn't the end. It's just another form of love, reshaped by loss. And sometimes, the most beautiful thing you can do for someone you've lost is to keep telling their story. To keep singing their song. To let your tears fall, but also let your smile return. Because that's how they live on, not as a memory locked away, but as a presence carried forward. So here's to Jeff Beck. Here's to Johnny Depp. And here's to every single one of us who has ever cried, healed, and remembered through the power of a song.